Anthony Blinken, before he was the Secretary of State, he was brokering weapons deals, and now as Secretary of State, who would have guessed, Norman? He's brokering weapons deals to Ukraine.
Good point. Now he's just in a different job.
Right, exactly. He's doing the same thing pretty much. Thoughts on the war in Ukraine? To me, it feels like public sentiments are turning slowly. Have you noticed that at all?
I think there is a gradual shift, and there's more and more of a disconnect between the national media, the corporate media, as well as on Capitol Hill on the one hand, and grassroots sentiment. You have polling showing substantial numbers, sometimes majority of Americans say, let's not just keep shipping all these $1 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine and fueling the fire. Of course, it's horrible what Russia has been doing now for well over a year. The invasion should be denounced. These are ongoing war crimes by the Russian government in Ukraine. That doesn't change the reality that simply throwing billions of dollars worth of weapons into the fray from the United States, that just makes things worse and worse as time goes on. There's no solution there. And you mull over this question of what are the goals or motivations. And it seems pretty clear that the top of the US government is populated by people who really want this war to continue. I mean, that's the reality. There's all this enthusiasm. Let's keep the war going. And that's the antithesis of diplomacy, for which the United States has engaged in basically zero since it became clear that a Russian invasion was a danger. And there's this notorious event just a few weeks into the February invasion last year of Ukraine, where it seemed that a peace deal was in reach. And then the head of the British government, Boris Johnson, intervened, and the US also made clear it didn't want a peace deal. So, what kind of a country is that? What kind of a leadership is that? And, there's a lot of breastbeating and proud articles and punditry and the hot lights of the studios of US cable networks and so forth. And the messages to Ukrainians, we love you, we support you. Let's you and them fight. It's a very convenient attitude that, we're really in solidarity, we're really courageous here. The US government, the American people, we've got the Ukrainian flags all over our country. We really are the moral stalwarts in this situation. We'll keep sending weapons to Ukraine so Ukrainians and Russians keep killing each other. And we're just really great because we're standing firm for our principles. Well, one would think that our principles should include diplomacy, should include the idea that there are such things as diplomatic negotiations that actually aim to end the killing. But that seems to be rather controversial, to put it mildly, on Capitol Hill, as well as in the corporate media of this country.
Right. I think there's something analogous going on in Yemen right now, where you have Yemen who ready for negotiations, Saudi Arabia ready for negotiations, the Houthis, the rebels, ready for negotiations, and it's the US who is not ready to engage in negotiations, does not want a ceasefire yet, because the US's leverage has been minimized right now. We don't have maximum leverage, so we're not willing to negotiate until we have all the power, is what it seems. And that kind of seems like what's going on in Ukraine as well, because we're not totally dominating and we don't have 100% of the leverage. We don't want to engage in any diplomacy, not to mention the billions of dollars that are being made, that finally the mainstream media is at least kind of coming around to, that the military industrial complex, weapons manufacturers have been ripping off the American people for all time. This is what they've always done.